My name is Chris Spencer. I'm going to be presenting a winning style of play and pathway for future podium results in the discipline of 3-on-3 basketball. During this presentation, I plan to summarize the long-term athlete development model while highlighting key competitions and identifying target benchmarks for a podium trajectory. I'll also outline the key differences of the 3-on-3 discipline and how they influence a winning style of play. I'll share statistics taken from the Pro Tour as well as international events and highlight keys to success. And lastly, I'll provide some recommendations based on the current model as well as some limitations I found from the data. While the 3-on-3 discipline has enough variance that it does require its own specialization, the sport is still in its infancy and thus requires players to be primarily developed in the 5-on-5 setting before transitioning into 3-on-3. Furthermore, the incentivization of scholarships attained through U Sport, NCAA, and the Canadian Collegiate Athletic Association keep 5-on-5 athletes in the game. It should be noted that athletes should be introduced to 3-on-3 as early as possible, and that ultimately podium success will depend on an eventual full-time transition from 5-on-5 to 3-on-3. 3-on-3 has several unique differences. Teams are comprised of 4 athletes, with only 3 being on the floor at any given time. As a result, players cannot specialize and must have a variety of skills. The ball is smaller than found in a men's game. The court is limited to just a half court, and all games are played outside. As a result, athletes will frequently contend with wind and heat, as well as the opposition. Occasionally, if there's rain, the court can become slippery, which is an added difficulty. Game length is limited to 10 minutes, or first team to score 21 points. As a result, this promotes a fast and physical style of play, also influenced by the 12-second shot clock. Scoring in 3-on-3 is different than a 5-on-5 game. Shots outside of the arc are worth only 2 points, whereas shots inside the arc are worth 1. Effective field goal percentage is adjusting the field goal percentage to account for the differing values of shots taken within or beyond the arc. In the 3-on-3 discipline, shots taken beyond the arc are worth 2 times as much, as opposed to 5-on-5, where a 3-pointer is worth 1.5 as much as a shot taken within the arc. As a result, there's an increased value in the 3-on-3 discipline with long shooting, and these can be calculated using the formula of 1 point field goal shots made plus 2 times the number of 2-point field goals made divided by the total number of field goals attempted. Because the 3-on-3 discipline is so new, I'll be relying primarily on professional league stats as opposed to international play to make my argument why effective field goal percentage is such an important metric. Novi Sad, Serbia is a team that competed together from 2013 to 2019. During this period, they had an 85% winning rate and are commonly known as the greatest 3-on-3 team ever. During the 2018 season alone, they had a record of 30 wins and 0 losses. The 2 graphs below depict their effective field goal percentage compared to those of their opponents during this 2018 season. The first graph showing their averages in different tournaments against their opponents, with the lower graph showing their averages against each of the teams they played during those matches. There are a few instances where their opponents had a marginally better effective field goal percentage, although due to their defense and sometimes free throw shooting, they were able to overcome these, which resulted in their 30-0 record. To further show the importance of effective field goal percentage and how it relates to winning, I have included some statistics based on the few international competitions the 3x3 discipline has had. The first graph shows the World Cup qualifier where Puerto Rico was able to win this tournament in San Juan. The first four graphs compare their effective field goal percentage versus their opponent, with the last one showing the tournament average. The second graph shows USA's matches versus their opponents in the World Cup that was hosted in Amsterdam, with the last two bar graphs showing the averages from that tournament. This graph from the Olympic qualifying tournament further exemplifies why effective field goal percentage is such an important metric, as Poland was able to go on and win this tournament and qualify for the Olympics. This graph further exemplifies how effective field goal percentage determines your win rate. This is Latvia during the Tokyo Olympics, where they went on to win gold. You will notice in there's three occurrences where they have a lower effective field goal percentage against Belgium, Serbia, and Russia. They lost each of those matches during the round robin play. So the statistic holds true, and then we're able to go on and win gold in the tournament. Furthermore, it should be noted that having an effective field goal percentage is one thing, but figuring out how to attain that is a whole nother story, and I'll dive into that in upcoming slides. Now, finally, for some Canadian content, 2018 was one of the best performances by a Canadian team. The team from Saskatoon qualified for, I believe it was 3 Pro Tour events. They had a cumulative record of 6 wins and 12 losses, and the final standings were 12th. This graph shows their effective field goal percentage. Again, this one rang true where all the matches where they have a higher effective field goal percentage, they were able to win. The ones where they had a lower effective field goal percentage, they always lost. You can see there are a few really high performances where they're shooting 91%, 94%. Usually in those games, it meant a fairly average or low 1-point field goal percentage, but then they shot well from beyond the arc and were able to win those games. One thing that will come up next is the irregularity of what they play, and that's part of what I would argue determines their limited success rate. In order for Team Saskatoon to achieve the results they did, they were forced to travel at an alarming rate to play in challenger events that allowed them to qualify for the Pro Tour events in Saskatoon, Mexico City, Chengdu, and then eventually the Tour final in Beijing. I'd argue that if they were able to play more domestic events or just more events in general, they would qualify for more Pro Tour events, as a result have a higher standing on the Pro Tour, and additionally be in a better position to achieve a podium finish in the future. This graph further explains how the greater number of professional matches a team plays in a season will only help their tour rating. So in each of the 4 years described, there is a very linear correlation between the first ranked team and the number of matches they played during that season, all the way down to the 10th ranked team and the number of matches they played. To further show how success is a determinant of experience, I've taken the top 10 teams in the 2021 season. I compiled the total number of games each of the individual players on those teams' rosters has played throughout their career, and graphed them amongst each other. So the far left side of the column shows the team that finished in first place and the total number of professional 3-on-3 games the players in that team had accumulated. and the graph shows a fairly linear downward trend. As you go lower in the seedings, your team or the players in your team had generally played less matches. While continuing to show the importance of international tour experience, the pie chart in the top left is a breakdown of the total the top 100 players, top 100 male players in the professional tour, and the country they're from. The importance of this is because the vast majority of matches or tournaments, I should say, are in Europe and Asia. So those players have the greatest access to them. I think this graph is important because the players who live in those areas are able to basically just increase their experience at a lesser cost than those who live in, South America, Oceania, even North America to an extent. And this is reflected in the individual player rankings, where there is a substantially greater number of players from European countries than anywhere else. The second bar graph shows individual player rankings compared to their age. There's another, again, linear correlation that the longer you've played, the more games you've played, the higher your international ranking, and the deeper you go into the ranking, generally the younger players get. So we know that experience is crucial for success, and that having a higher effective field goal percentage is a direct correlation with winning. Now what becomes important is how do we achieve that higher effective field goal percentage? The stats on these charts show the 4 Canadian players who represented our country at the Olympic qualifying tournament. Their tournament only lasted 2 games before they were eliminated. Each of these graphs show their individual players' success rate in different actions. So posting up, spotting up for jump shots, having a teammate set an on-the-ball screen, a dribble handoff, having a teammate set a screen for the third player on your team, an isolation play, and basically an offensive rebound that's scored. The most important or the most effective way for the Canadian team and most teams, I'd argue, is hitting spot up shots, but also utilizing ball screens, dribble handoffs, and off the ball screens. The challenging part in the game becomes how do you implement these actions into your style of play, given that there is only a 12-second shot clock, so you're limited to a 12-second possession, and additionally you don't have the benefit of having a coach on the court or in the stands that you can communicate with. As a result, players have to have just a general chemistry and knowledge of where they can be successful as an individual, but also as a team. In summary, an Olympic podium result could be achieved if athletes are achieving podium results at international level events from 0 to 2 years out from the Olympics, ideally doing this between the ages of 28 and 32. Between the ages of 24 to 28 and 4 years out from the Olympics, they should be winning pro tours. From 21 to 28 years old, they should be winning challenger events 4 to 6 years out from the Olympics. By the age of 22, they should have full-time transition to the 3-on-3 game, and ideally we want athletes to be exposed to the 3-on-3 competition between the ages of 10 and 16. That would be 12 to 16 years out from the Olympic Games. In order to further our success rate at international level events, including the Olympics, we primarily need to increase the number of domestic events. This would increase exposure to the game, by allowing us to recruit more 5-on-5 athletes into 3-on-3, but also recruiting athletes who aren't playing basketball at all into 3-on-3. Additionally, this would provide more competition for our Canadian athletes to gain experience and World Tour points at less cost. Furthermore, I'd recommend that domestic events like the U15 and U17 5-on-5 national championships should incorporate a 3-on-3 component. The same should be said for the Canadian Summer Games. It should also be noted that due to the fewer number of players and the increased number of touches that a player gets while playing 3-on-3, it's an excellent tool for development in both the 3-on-3 and 5-on-5 game, and should be utilized as frequently as possible in both disciplines. That concludes my presentation on podium results tracking and winning style of play. I hope you enjoyed the information I provided, and I look forward to your feedback.